There we go. And we're back again with our Ramadan series. And this is probably going to be the last one that we've got because I feel like we've done like 3 or 4 already and Ramadan will be over and then Eid will be back anyway. I've got Aminor back from our Liverpool preview to kind of just talk me through his footballing hero. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening to our footballing hero series this far along. This one is obviously a Liverpool one, being a Liverpool supporter. So I really don't need to ask you who your footballing hero is, Aminor, because I kind of already know in it. But you can tell the audience just if they don't know.
Gerrard.
Steven Gerrard. And for Steven Gerrard, this is someone that I don't need to do any research about because I've loved watching him. I've hated watching him. I've laughed watching him. And I've probably cried watching him as well. So that's how I can describe Steven Gerrard as a Manchester United and as an England fan as well. So Aminor, take it away with your first impressions of Steven Gerrard when you were growing up. What did you kind of remember from the early days of Steven Gerrard, #17, before he became number 8?
It was actually number 28.
Was you remember from that long ago? Nicely done.
It was 28, then he went 17. To number 17, then he went to number 8.
Good man.
Yeah, I remember his debut goal. Obviously, at that time, I wasn't really watching football because I was only about 4. So I wasn't really interested in football like that.
I'm surprised you can remember that long, but yeah, nicely done. Mine was like 2001, I'd say, as my earliest football memory.
Yeah, I started watching football in 2001. To be fair, Steven Gerrard wasn't initially my hero. It was actually Michael Owen.
We can talk about Michael Owen every day of the week. I've got time for Michael Owen.
But I'd rather not. But Michael Owen was actually my hero until he left us. And I remember I was sad. I remember I cried when Michael Owen left to go Real Madrid.
That was me and David Beckham, man. In that 2002-2003 season, my mum treated my brother and I to Man United kits, the blue away kit. So he got Van Nistelrooy on the back. One. The Vodafone one with the silver outline and everything. Sick. My brother got the Ruud Van Nistelrooy shirt, number 10. And I got David Beckham. They're the only ones that JJB were doing at the time. Remember JJB?
JJB Sports. Love it.
They were the only one that was doing it at the time. So I was like, yeah, I'll take David Beckham. Is a decent player. I really like him as well. I tried to do my hair like him with the mohawk. It didn't work because the water would fade away, or the gel would fade away. But yeah, he was obviously my first footballing hero. And then I was distraught when he left for Real Madrid, not knowing that a certain young Portuguese was coming through to tear it up at Man United a couple of seasons down the line. But that was just with me as well. I was so upset about David Beckham going, and I was like, what am I going to do? Like you said previously when we were having a conversation, those were the kind of problems we had as children. Our footballing heroes left for another club, innit?
Exactly.
Like, what are we going to do?
It's just crazy. I remember like Owen was my life. I remember he was just everything. Like the way he used to just run past people and the way he finished everything, and he was only like 18, 19 at that time. Like it was amazing. And then
Ballon d'Or winner at 22 as well, if I remember correctly.
Ballon d'Or winner as well, yeah. So I remember I enjoyed Owen for a good season or 2. I remember he went to Madrid, and then obviously he left. I was heartbroken. I was only like 7, 8 years old. I was like, oh, what am I gonna do? And then obviously I started supporting Liverpool when we won the FA Cup against Arsenal in 2001. When we won 2-1.
That gold kit.
Yeah, that orange kit, yeah. And then, so then obviously Owen left, and then I started seeing Gerrard play, and I was like, whoa, this guy just shoots from anywhere, and he just goes in. He just anywhere, literally, he shoots from anywhere, and he can just go in. And it ain't even a little, like, it's not even like a side foot where he places it. He just
Pile drivers from Gerrard.
He literally just whacks it, and it goes in. And I was like, this guy is amazing. Like, who is he? And then I started watching him. And then we done the supposed fake treble in 2003, where we won the League Cup, the FA Cup, and the Worthington Cup, was it? I think it was the Worthington Cup.
That was in 2001. 2003, we won the league. Arsenal won the FA Cup.
We won the UEFA Cup, I think.
Yeah, UEFA Cup, that was it.
We won the UEFA Cup, yes. And then obviously I saw like Gerrard getting better. And then I remember him taking the captaincy from Sami Hyypiä in 2004.
That was crazy because obviously when we were growing up, leaders were probably the most experienced players in the team that you'd be seeing. We've got the Roy Keanes, we've got the Vieiras.
Yeah, they were like 27, 28, and that's when they started taking the reins.
And that's when we kind of saw the new reigns of captains coming through. So to interrupt, but that's when like the younger John Terry was coming through, the younger Steven Gerrard, like you said. So it was a new era of
the Ledley
captaincy coming
Kings
through.
and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, Ledley King, good shout out.
Yeah, and then I saw him, and then I remember watching the Champions League. Like, I remember that Olympiacos goal. I still get like goosebumps whenever I watch it, whenever I hear, "It's a beat, what a hit, son." Like,
what a hit, son, what a hit. I'm not going to do the accent. My Scottish is awful. I've got a Scottish
background.
today,
It was just, I was just like, wow. Like, I could feel like at that time, I didn't know what goosebumps were. I didn't know what all of that sort of stuff was, but I just felt some sort of energy inside me, like, whoa. And then, so we won that game, and I was like, I didn't really understand like Champions League that much. I just knew that the best European clubs played. At that time, I was only about 9. So I remember it was a Champions League final against Milan, and me and my dad were watching it. Milan just scored, and they scored again, and they scored again, and it was half time, and my dad's like to me, "There's no point of watching it. Like, you're just gonna make yourself more sad. Like, it's just gonna get worse. It can't be any better." So I remember like Gerrard, the way that we came out, Benitez changed the structure of the team, and then Gerrard scored that header. I was like, okay, consolation at the most. And then literally a couple of minutes later, Smitsa scored that nice little power driver. Another minute later, Gerrard gets taken down and Alonso scores. And then all of a sudden, half an hour left, 3-3. And I remember the shift that he played, like the shift that he put in that game.
Do I remember it correctly? Yeah, I was going to say, do I remember it correctly? He started as a right mid that game.
Yeah,
and you had Sissoko, Alonso, and Harry Kewell just in front of him. Was that correct? And Reece on the left. But Harry Kewell came off as a sub, innit? He got injured in the first half.
He got injured, yeah. So that's when Smitsa and Hamann as well. So Gerrard was like right mid, centre mid, supporting striker, right back, centre back, you name it. And I just remember his legs just going. And then we're going to have to give a special shout out to Jerzy Dudek for the little last minute save on Shevchenko's header.
That Shevchenko header would have literally, everyone would know about Andrei Shevchenko. Because I'm surprised that people don't know who Andrei Shevchenko is in this day.
Yes, weird.
Like, he's just remembered for his 2003 Champions League win, but that was a 0-0 against Juventus. But he literally solidified himself with that.
He doesn't get the recognition.
It definitely doesn't for me.
With the elite strikers.
Definitely doesn't get that recognition because people remember him from his Chelsea days, isn't it? Which is awful.
That was poor.
We're not going to mention Andrei Shevchenko or Chelsea strikers in this podcast, so don't worry about that.
Let's not.
Let's continue with the Champions League final.
Yeah, and then I remember just like watching him, like he's just dragged us through the mud. Like literally, we was nothing. And also, we got to mention that team was poor. That 2004-2005 team was poor.
You finished, what, 6th in the league or something like that?
Yeah, we was really bad in the league. But with Champions League, we was amazing because like Champions League nights at Anfield, you know about that. You know, it's different level, different grade.
Who doesn't know about that?
Exactly.
Who doesn't know about Champions League night? Apart from the crowdless ones at the moment.
Yeah.
That's just been awful.
Poor. That. Hate it. But that team was actually poor. Like, I remember seeing the lineups. Like whenever I see it now, I mean, like comparing man to man, I'm pretty sure AC Milan won 10-1 when it came man to man. Like the only man that could get into AC Milan's team would have been Gerrard.
And even that, where would you put him in that midfield?
Where would you put him? You've got Seedorf, Pirlo,
Gattuso.
Exactly. That's another one. Like, would he fit in there? Who do you take out for him? But the only one that was even anywhere near getting into that team was Gerrard. Our team was so poor. So the way he dragged us through the mud, like we were nothing. And he literally pulled us through. And at that time, you got to remember, Alonso was still quite young. He wasn't that good yet.
He wasn't the Xabi Alonso who's like coming up to those years of becoming
he was still new. He was just literally quite young, really. He was like 22, 23 himself.
As a playmaking midfielder, deep line playmaking midfielder, you have to take a couple of years to get yourself into the game properly. Personally, from my scene, you've never gone like there's a player at AC Milan called Sandro Tonali who people are writing off as a young playmaker, but in 5-6 years' time, he could be one of the best midfielders. And
playmaking that position, you got it's different compared to like a so-called attacker. Where you're more further up. You got to be able to...
Like a Gerrard, for example. Yeah. Gerrard was someone that had to go from different positional plays under Rafa Benitez as someone who was literally just stuck in that midfield as a centre midfielder, not really running the show, but getting into the box late, scoring goals, influencing the play in that way. And that's something that takes time as a young centre midfielder, which is what 100%. I really find fascinating when you're watching some of these players that play at smaller teams or teams, even like Harry Winks, for example, is kind of one of those players that doesn't get the patience because he has to play somewhere else to kind of learn how to play like a number 6 playmaker.
Yeah.
That's something I can talk about later with a certain hero of mine. But yeah, carry on with the Champions League.
Yeah, so we won the Champions League, and it was just like, I remember I was crying that night. I couldn't believe it. Like, wow, like my hero at that time, like he actually dragged us through. And then the year later, the FA Cup final, the Gerrard final, which is what it's known as really, where we were 3-0 down again, literally dragged us through the game again, and then literally in the 93rd minute or what, just randomly falls to him and he just whacks it.
I have to tell you a story about that. That was probably one of the worst moments for me as a football fan, because at the time, no, it's nothing to do with like Liverpool or anything like that. But at the time, it was 3-2 in the cup final, and we were running low on snacks or something in the house, something like that, something random like that. And my mum and dad were like, "Oh, this is getting good. This is a good FA Cup final. Hamza, go out and get some snacks from the corner shop." It was like 5 minutes around the corner from us. I was like, "Mum, no." They're like, "No, West Ham are going to win. They're going to win. It's going to be good, and we're going to see a London team lift the FA Cup, and Liverpool going to lose." I'm like, "All right, fine then." They're Arsenal fans, my parents. So I went. I got some snacks and some other stuff just for me anyway. I thought, you know what, let's treat myself like for an ice cream or something. But me taking so long in that corner shop, I got there and I was like, "What's happened?" And it's like, "Oh, I walked in and I was shopping and I saw on this small crappy TV from the newsagents, you know, those little box TVs that are like that. Yeah. I hear the commentary of like obviously Gerrard scoring another power driver past Shaka Hislop. I think it's Hislop or Rob Green in goal for West Ham. Shaka Hislop. And I'm just there like, what the hell, man? I've left home at the wrong time just to see Gerrard score on a small, crappy, fuzzy TV. One of those moments. I then go home and I'm like angry at my mum and dad. I'm like, "Why did you get me to go out now?" I was like, "It's going to be extra time now. You'll enjoy it." And I don't know if I've told you this, or you probably remember from our school days. FA Cup final day in our family was such a big thing back in the day because you just get whatever team's playing, you're just going to enjoy the day. And BBC Sport and ITV Sport, they used to make such a big deal out of the cup final. Now it's just, annoyingly, it's just another game, which is really annoying to see. BT Sport do a really good job of like the whole day thing. But with BBC, they'll have the game on at like a 3:00 kickoff, but they'll bring on the coverage at like 2 because they've got other shows on, and they'll rush the extra time and penalties. But back in those days, the cup final day, there was no other game on in England at the time because you could actually watch the game properly. So I was just there like, you know what, we could have got the snacks early, we could have done this early, could have done that earlier. But I'm like, you know what, it's going to be good extra time, and it was a really good extra time. West Ham could have snuck away with it eventually, but then it came to penalties again. So what do you remember about the penalty shootout against West Ham United?
Penalty shootout, I don't actually remember much, to be fair.
You don't remember Pepe Reina doing the madness?
I remember that, of course. I remember Cisse scoring. Obviously, I remember Gerrard scoring. I think Crouch scored one.
Because Morientes got subbed off for Crouch, wasn't it? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Morientes,
and I remember Reina he had a little bit of hair at that time as well.
It was young Reina at the time.
Young Reina. And I just remember I was like, what the hell? Like 2 years in a row, 2 cup finals.
2 penalty shootouts in a row.
2 penalty shootouts. 2 3-0 comebacks. Like, this is crazy. Like, what a time to be a Liverpool fan. But at the same time, whenever I look at our league stats, were just poor. And then I remember, like, all of the cups were done and all of that. And then I remember us buying Fernando Torres. That was the next. Where
it gets a bit interesting. This is 2-3 years down the line.
Yeah.
We're not going to mention the other AC Milan final, are we, Amin? We're going to skip
there's no point of that one.
We'll skip over that one.
We'll skip over that one.
Don't worry,
that's fine. To be fair, that's another thing. He managed to lead us to another Champions League final in 2007.
That run-up you had, I forgot who you played in that run-up to. I think you played Chelsea again, didn't you, in that 2007?
We had Chelsea, we had Barca.
Bellamy scoring at the new camp, that was iconic for Craig
Yeah, Bellamy in that green and white away
shirt.
top. Yeah.
That's when Benitez really attacked at the new camp.
Golf celebration.
Before Barcelona, that really triggered Barcelona to become a better team, and they signed Henry that summer. So winning it, Henry left the Premier League that year.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember buying Fernando Torres. I was like, obviously I was a bit skeptical because we were giving Luis Garcia away, and I liked Luis Garcia.
And you had Dirk Kuyt the season before as well. He scored in Athens as well, but they were unsure about where they're going to play him. He ended up as a right winger, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Instead of a striker.
Initially, he was a striker, but I think Benitez saw that this guy's got a good work rate. So we got Fernando Torres, tweaked the formation. Mascherano came in
permanently
from West Ham, and like our team was, our team was getting a bit more solid. Like we had a nice little 4-2-3-1 formation with Alonso and Mascherano holding, Babel/Riera on the left, Kuyt on the right, Gerrard just off Torres. And that was like one of the best times up to then, like me supporting Liverpool. It was good.
It's like you said, it's one of the best times to be a Liverpool fan in the league as well. It's something that you could literally see your team winning week in, week out, doing really attractive football. And you weren't burnt out from your European nights or your cup nights, because that's how Liverpool played under Rafa Benitez. They were really energetic. They were highly enthusiastic from the front, pressing from the front, following Gerrard's leadership, really, which is great to see as a Man United fan, because you knew they'd slip up eventually. They'd end up losing a couple goals here and there against teams like Reading, against teams like...
We had a lot of draws.
Teams like Blackburn as well. It's something stupid that... just because you had such a good team, you didn't have such a good squad. That was what was annoying. Gerrard was irreplaceable in that team. Torres was irreplaceable.
I remember.
Voronin was not the replacement for Fernando Torres, that sub-striker.
No.
And it just didn't work in your favour, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was poor. Like, our squad was bad. Like, the only good replacement we had was Babel for Riera. Like, whenever Riera was subbed off, we'd put on Babel. Benayoun was somewhat okay.
He did his job.
In terms of like striker, like Torres, Gerrard, Mascherano, Alonso, we didn't really have a replacement.
And even with your core, Carragher, Skirtle coming through as well. Skirtle.
Yeah.
Skirtle and Agger didn't really play that much because Carragher was kind of like stuck in that team, basically.
Yeah. And then like left back wise, we were poor.
Aurelio.
After when it was Aurelio, Insua. Right back, we just had Arbeloa. So
Finnan had left.
Finnan had left. So squad-wise, we were poor. Whereas United, who was our rivals at that time, especially for the league, in the middle, you had your Andersons, your Fletchers, whilst having Scholes and Carrick there already.
This was when this is literally the difference between us, because back in those days we had 5 subs on the bench as well, so you could see any kind of combination from our 2007 to 2009 kind of team when we won the league 3 years in a row. We could literally rest players against, let's say, Dynamo Kiev in the midweek, but Ronaldo would still play. We'd rest players on the weekend, but Tevez and Rooney would still play, etc., etc. Like you said, in the midfield, where the engine room is in football, at that time in the Premier League, Paul Scholes, who I'm going to get onto in a bit, he was there to dictate the play for Man United, and he was to make sure that we were controlling the game properly. And that's kind of where a young Xabi Alonso just wasn't at that point in his career. And that's honestly for me to say, because you could have a holding midfield with Mascherano next to him, who was brilliant at stopping the ball, cutting the lines and everything like that. But as a Man United fan, when you've got Scholes and Carrick in there dictating the play in the Premier League, you could end up playing 3 in midfield with Carrick and Anderson and Fletcher, Fletcher and Owen Hargreaves as well, doing really well at that time. But it's just one of those things that having a controlling midfielder at the time for Liverpool probably could have helped you in the league a lot better with Xabi Alonso, with Mascherano, with Gerrard as well. But that's something that, like you said, you kind of lacked in your squad at the time.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that was the main reason why we couldn't keep up with you guys. Like we pushed you towards the end of a few seasons for the league, but it wasn't ever going to happen. We was always going to slip up.
And it was only in that 08-09 season where we kind of saw you as dominant title contenders as well.
Contenders, yeah.
We lost at Anfield in September. I think it was like Berbatov's debut as well. We lost 2-1, where Tevez Berbatov and Rooney were playing. I think Tevez scored, and then we lost 2-1 that game as well, and that was awful at Anfield. As you do, we don't really play well at Anfield in historical Premier League games. And then that was just when you were kind of getting your team up and running, really. You were Gerrard was managing his game a bit better for me personally at the time. You're like, you know what? He's not running around like a madman. He doesn't need to anymore because he's got the team around him that's kind of doing it. He had Mascherano there helping him out. He had Alonso dictating play a lot better than he was. And Fernando Torres was in the form of his life those 2-3 years. He started at Liverpool. So you could get 1-2 goals up and you could shut a game up properly, which is something that Liverpool hadn't really done recently in that time.
Yeah.
That was what really worried us because Benitez had invested in really defending the lead properly, which is really good. And I remember that game you played against Blackburn. You were winning 3-0 within 40 minutes, and Benitez was like, "Nah, it's game over. It's done. It's finished." And he had time to actually rest Torres. But he could actually do that, and that was something that was ridiculously scary when you ended up coming to Old Trafford that year. And Cristiano Ronaldo scored a penalty in front of a Stretford end to make it 1-0. But we know what happens after that. You can take that away. Torres and Vidic. And not even just Torres as well. Gerrard scoring that free kick. People forget because of that iconic
Aurelio
camera celebration.
Yeah. And then to top it off, Dossena scored as well, that lob.
That chip, that was ridiculous. He did that to Van der Sar as well. That was a game where we had Anderson and Fletcher in the midfield, if I remember correctly, and Scholes and Anderson and Carrick in the midfield. Scholes, Giggs, and Berbatov came on as subs, but Scholes was again a player that I thought was really good at dictating the play. So I don't like these comparisons of Scholes, Gerrard, and Lampard. But with me, again, going back to one of my footballing heroes being Paul Scholes, number 18. I was born on the 18th of the month, so I've always had an inclination to the number 18. Scholes, Ashley Young, Bruno Fernandes at the moment, so it's all running good. Even with us, with Paul Scholes, he was a different kind of player to Gerrard, so that's what I wanted to talk about personally, how everyone was like, oh, Scholes, Gerrard, Lampard. It's kind of like Grealish, Maddison, Mount, or Foden at the moment. People want to compare players because they're English and they're scoring goals every now and then. Paul Scholes wasn't a great goal scorer after 2004, I would say. That's when he changed his game to becoming the proper dictating midfielder, when he could actually pull the strings. He could let other players kind of run through and goal. A young Ronaldo, Ji-Sung Park, young Wayne Rooney as well, Luis Saha doing really well. And that was something that I'm not going to pretend like I saw him in 99 or whenever. That's when he won the Champions League as a goal scorer midfielder because he had Roy Keane next to him. But he obviously adapted his game when he had Michael Carrick in 2007 with him, which was brilliant. And I think when he retired from England, that just took his game to another level where he could actually be our conductor. And you've seen the people that I've quoted on, like Thierry Henry saying Paul Scholes is probably the best midfielder of his generation, Vieira saying it, Zidane saying it, Xavi and Iniesta saying it. And you got people like on social media saying, oh, Scholes didn't score goals as much as Gerrard and Lampard. But for me, it's not about that. It's about how you dictate a game of football and how he got others into play. He got a young Wayne Rooney to score loads of goals. He's got a Saha, he got Van Nistelrooy through and goal a lot as well. And that's why I think England failed to actually have Paul Scholes as that proper number 6 in midfield to dictate the play like a Pirlo or a Xavi did. And especially at Euro 2004, that was insulting to see him playing as a winger, as a left midfielder against Croatia and France and all of that nonsense. That was awful. You could have easily, if Wenger and Eriksson actually changed it from the classic English 4-4-2, England would have won that competition. There's no doubt about that. Even with the
easy 4-3-3.
Not even 4-3-3. Even being a bit more adventurous, like a 3-5-2, having Beckham and Ashley Cole as the wing backs, probably playing another centre back like Ledley King or something like that. Then you got Gerrard, Scholes, Lampard in midfield, and then you got Rooney up front. You got the width, you got the control in midfield of Scholes, you got the bombing midfielders of Gerrard and Lampard, and that was young Steven Gerrard and young Frank Lampard at the time. Lampard got second or third in the Ballon d'Or list that year as well, which is ridiculous. It was a fantastic player to watch, and that's why I really don't like the fact of comparing these kind of players because they're all
different in their own way. And also this current generation of fans, they're so stats obsessed.
I hate, you can't be stat padded. You can't be stat padding in football.
They're so obsessed with stats. Don't get me wrong, Roberto Firmino isn't playing well right now, but his stats are always brought up.
This will be going out in April, so he could be playing well in April. So we'll see what happens.
But currently, or in February, But let's just say
March. We're in March.
March. Oh my God, yeah. But currently, like, his off form doesn't really score. He's never really been a true goal scorer, but no one understands what his role is. It's more to get like a Salah and a Mane in.
He brings himself out of position to get Mane and Salah into position.
Exactly. So that's what it is. Like nowadays, kids, they just look at it as, oh, you know what? I think Lampard might have been the best one. His stats look amazing. Gerrard and Scholes, yeah.
That one about Lampard really annoys me. I'm not taking away from Frank Lampard. He's a fantastic midfielder and one of the worst players to play against Man United because he scored like every other time. But the fact that people are like, oh, if Lampard stopped scoring in 2009, he had more assists and goals. Yeah. He had more than Scholes, he had more than Xavi, more than Iniesta.
Yeah.
You're not going to argue Lampard against Xavi and Iniesta. They're just different players entirely. But that's what I loved about Paul Scholes and Steven Gerrard personally. They adapted their games, but it's just because they didn't adapt it for England or they didn't get into the system under Sven-Göran and Eriksson. Apparently, Scholes did really well under Glenn Hoddle in like Euro 96 and 90.
He did.
I didn't see that.
I have read it, yeah. Like, that's the problem. Like, Sven was a big problem. He had the golden generation. Like,
he had the players that he could have asked for, and he had the European...
They were literally world class in every position except for goalkeeper.
Yeah, literally
At that time, David Seaman was dying out, but he was still class.
And then David James came through as well, so it's just like David James, Paul Robinson. No one really kind of taking the reins as a world class English keeper.
Yeah, but in like, I'm not sure if you watched that Rio Ferdinand BT Sport interview, the one with Gerrard and.
Is it Lampard and Gerrard?
Lampard, Gerrard, and Ferdinand, weren't it?
Yeah. Why did the golden generation fail?
That one, yeah. I'm sure you've watched it. And they basically more or less put Sven under the bus.
But that's what players do, to be fair. Like Ferdinand went on about David Moyes being a bad manager, but to be fair, Ferdinand was awful in his final season for Man United. But they just want to pass the blame to someone else. Not a lot of them take accountability.
To be fair, they did take part of the blame as well, because they always used to say the Man United table sat here, the Liverpool table sat here, the Chelsea players sat here. Like, they were never like pals.
They were never together because they were always worried about coming together in September or October in an international break and just getting on with their team, because you don't want to increase the level of Frank Lampard from giving advice to Steven Gerrard if you're a Chelsea player or this, that and the other. So they played as individuals, and looking back at it, you can see that. But again, I was one of the biggest England fans when I was a kid, and I was just there. Like,
same here. I nearly loved England as much as Liverpool.
Same with me. Like 2002 World Cup, I was crying when we lost to Brazil. 2006 against penalties, I was like, get Ronaldo out of the club. I hate him. But that we don't need to say that anymore. That's going on the podcast, but I'm not going to say anymore.
Like nowadays, like you see they're all boys. Like you see Rashford and Sancho. You see
Grealish and Saka. That's a funny one. That's a funny combination.
Do you get like they're all friends, but.
I think that's to be credited to the St. George's Park in Burton, where they actually go for a proper, not just a training ground, it's actual camp. Because every other major country has had that. And you can see that in players like South American countries, especially when they go back to Brazil, when they're playing with their clubs, they're just boys again. They're like boys, and they're just boys in the playground, basically, just chatting.
Yeah, like even when Spain was dominating in 08, 10, 12, Sergio Ramos and Puyol would be grabbing each other's throats in the Clásico. Yeah. But once they're with the national teams, they're all kissing each other.
I forgot about it. They got on with it.
Do you get? Like, that's the difference. Like, they knew what it meant to win in all competitions.
That's something that really, like, if Scholes wasn't played as a left midfielder for England, but even if he actually stayed as an England player, he'd have just been another player in that squad, because they're focused on Gareth Barry, Lampard and Gerrard, because he thought Gareth Barry would be the one to hold in midfield. Lampard and Gerrard can bomb on, or sometimes Gerrard would play as a number 10. He didn't really play out wide, which is good to see under Capello. I'm really happy about that. But that was kind of when Michael Carrick was, again, just a squad player for Man United. And again, here's another kind of player that would dictate the game. He would calm the game down. He would make sure that if there was a counter-attack coming on the opposite side, coming toward him, he would stay back and make sure that he could actually help out the defence. And that was something really good from Michael Carrick to see. But with Paul Scholes was just there making sure that he could ping a ball wherever on the pitch. You could point somewhere and he'd ping it with the right way to pass, with the right accuracy, and it'd make sure that a player was through on goal. And that's something that I really believe that Steven Gerrard did in his later years. So probably we'll skip the 2008-9 thing, but kind of when Kenny Dalglish came into effect, really, because he stopped playing as a number 10 behind like the likes of Suarez or Andy Carroll at the time. He became more of a holding midfielder, kind of next to Jordan Henderson or Jay Spearing, or someone of that ilk, basically. That was kind of when I saw Steven Gerrard, and I think people kind of appreciated how he was as a goal scorer. He scored that hat-trick against Everton that season as well, and there's that season when you were challenging for the league under Brendan Rodgers as well. And that's kind of when you see in that formation, Gerrard was at the 6 in the diamond behind Henderson and Coutinho, Sterling, Sturridge, and Suarez as well. So I just wanted to know what iteration of Steven Gerrard did you like the most? Did you kind of like him at the number 6 kind of dictating the play, or did you like him bombing forward, scoring amazing goals, and kind of being that explosive captain, that Captain Marvel that you can see pulling his team over the line and winning trophies? What kind of iteration of Steven Gerrard did you like?
Bombing forward and scoring worldies, always. Because at that time, the team he had was poor. So he done everything himself. 13-14 season, when he was a holding midfielder, he had Henderson for the legs. He had Coutinho, Sterling, Suarez, Sturridge. Like, he had
the goals for the creativity.
Yeah, that was there. He just had to, make sure that he's dictating, spraying the passes. Defense was poor. I'm not going to lie. It was the back five was terrible.
Kolo Touré, you had Mignolet in goal. Kolo Touré is good, obviously, but at that time, he wasn't the best.
Glenn Johnson, Flanagan. Yeah, it was poor. Gerrard's played in some really, really, really poor Liverpool teams, like really bad.
Yeah.
The Champions League winning one, that was poor. Literally, it was just him. Alonso was still young. Up front, we didn't they were
Milan Barros up front, innit?
Yeah, they were just okay players, innit?
Yeah, they weren't proper goal scorers. You hadn't replaced Michael Owen properly.
Yeah, exactly. And we tried to with Morientes and all of them, but it didn't really work out.
Cisse, Crouch, that kind of players.
Cisse would have been amazing. He was just injury prone. He was really good. Even Henry said he was wicked, but he weren't meant to be. Then the 08-09 season, there was more balance. Rafa brought in a bit more balance, more players, working the team. Everyone was in their own positions and they knew what their task was.
Yeah.
Once Torres left, that's when it went. It was poor. We got Suarez, but he was still quite young.
He wasn't that gunman that you see every now and then for the last 10 years or so. Someone still coming into himself, and they were trying to link Carroll and Suarez together. So sometimes Suarez had to drop out wide, and it wasn't
exactly. It wasn't happening. And at that time, we had Jay Spearing, Poulsen. It was poor. I remember that team. It was rubbish. Moreles, all of them lot.
Because what I wanted to ask you now was, do you reckon Steven Gerrard as a holding midfielder would have been brilliant in his prime as opposed to this bombing kind of midfielder? Because, like I said, I really liked him in that 13-14 season when he was kind of dictating players, kind of bringing Liverpool forward, but from the back. He let other players kind of push on and score the goals and get more of the glory in a way. But I'm just kind of thinking, you know what? Because of the quality, like you said, it wasn't there. So he kind of had to do 2-3 different roles, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, just to get your team over the line. But that's what annoys me. The recruitment at Liverpool at the time wasn't the best. You didn't replace Owen. You didn't really replace Heskey. And you had injury-prone players left, right, and centre. But that's kind of why even with Paul Scholes, I keep saying, I appreciate him more as a dictating midfielder because he let other players get the glory, got other players to score more goals, and they had the legs to kind of run past them and Scholes would find them. That's something that Gerrard did really well for England, I should say. He did really well for them in the Euro 2012 when he was holding with Scott Parker in midfield against Sweden, a couple other teams. Italy, we got run over by Pirlo. Run right by Pirlo. And even in 2014, I know we got knocked out in the group stages, but he was kind of trying to dictate play with Henderson in the midfield against, again, Italy. We lost, Uruguay, we lost, and that was it really. But that's kind of the Steven Gerrard I kind of like to see, and I appreciate him when he was kind of in his older age. But if you had the choice, would you still be happy with Steven Gerrard as an attacking midfielder, or would he have just been someone that you would have kind of see dictating the play?
If I'm to put Gerrard in our current team right now, he'd be an attacking midfielder.
So he'd be kind of like, you'd have Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Gerrard, but Gerrard would be the one bombing forward.
Fabinho, Henderson, Gerrard, or Fabinho, Thiago. Like we've got so many centre mids right now. You get
it would be Gerrard, the one behind the striker, basically making those overlapping runs.
Gerrard would be a number 8, but attacking number 8.
Because with me, I'd see Paul Scholes as, again, I loved him when he was scoring goals in his earlier years when I remember watching him growing up. But
he was a very good dictator. That's why, like,
he was the dictating English centre mid that no one appreciated until he retired. Even Man United fans didn't see how good he was until he retired, and then he had to come back the next season again just to help us out in midfield as well. Because
that's when he wore number 22.
Yeah, man, it just didn't.
Because Ashley Young got number 18, innit?
Yeah, definitely. But no, it was for me. If I was to have him in our midfield at the moment, I'd have him as that dictator midfielder, not the one bombing forward, scoring the goals, the one that had the eye for the killer pass, the one that could calm the game down. He could make sure that the right passes were played properly, and someone that really managed the game well, who's a coach on the pitch. I think Mike Phelan or Carlos Queer, as one of our assistant coaches, had called him the coach on the pitch previously, which is really good to see. And that's something that I really like, because that's something that Frank Lampard was always known for, just scoring goals. Paul Scholes was always known for being another English player, which obviously when kids nowadays look at stats, Paul Scholes didn't score as many goals as Lampard and Gerrard, but Scholes had a different role in the team. And Scholes allowed the other players to get the stats, to get the goals. Because even if I was to compare it, I wouldn't compare Gerrard, Lampard, and Scholes. I'd compare Gerrard, Lampard, and Rooney. Because Rooney was playing as an attacking midfielder at the time for Man United. He wasn't always number 9. He was sometimes number 10, or sometimes even number 8. And you can compare their goals as well together. But that's kind of how I would see it personally, if we were to see them in the current teams, in the current lineups as well. And just to finish it off, Amino, I'd like to know your top 3 Steven Gerrard memories as a Liverpool fan, or as an England fan, if there was any. Go for it.
Top 3 Steven Gerrard memories: lifting the Champions League, the Olympiacos goal, and there's so many. I don't know which one to choose.
It's in no order. It's fine. Just any.
It's just him being a loyal footballer, and him just
not moving to Chelsea under Jose Mourinho.
That I don't blame him. I'll be honest, I don't blame him.
He could have won so much with them. He would have got his league title.
He could have easily won plenty of league titles. But he chose to be loyal somewhat, but he stayed in the end. And him just always violating Everton. I loved it.
Just ruined them completely.
He always ruined them.
He did so much against Everton, and that's something that you probably would have needed as well. That bit of Scouse passion you needed in your team recently as well.
Yeah. What about yours with Scholes?
I'll say mine with Gerrard, just to be join in the fun. Gerrard, for me, obviously slipping against Chelsea with the demo bar coming through. One of my favourite ones was the USA goal in the World Cup, if you remember.
Yeah, Heskey gave him a little pat down, didn't he? He laid it off. I'm
just there, this is going to be one of the most amazing World Cup campaigns of our lives. And then it just happened with Germany, and nothing happened as well. And another one for me was when you see him against, I don't know who it was someone in the Premier League, but he scored one of the most amazing goals. I think it's against Middlesbrough.
It was
one of the most amazing
goals. About 40 yards and he just whacked it.
On the half volley. At the top end, you're just there this is ridiculous, man. The talent he has, and he does it every other week, is ridiculous. I thought it was incredible. But yeah, those are mine with Gerrard. Mine with Scholes would be probably, he scored a really good goal. He scored one against Aston Villa at Villa Park, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I remember him being vital for us winning the FA Cup in 2004. He scored a goal against Arsenal in the semi-final at Villa Park as well. So, Paul Scholes clearly likes Villa Park, which was fun. And one of them for me is when he came back from retirement, and he was just there kind of just, again, dictating the play and showing our midfield it's not always about scoring goals or bombing out the pitch and stuff like that. And he kind of helped. It didn't help us. We finished second because of goal difference at the time, but we were so close to winning the league. But it was just one of those things that it shows a testament to his character, that it was like, you know what, I'm not going to sit out. I can't see my team do this, that, and the other. Because I was listening on the Man United official podcast that he was like, I was still fit, I could still play, but I was just coaching the reserves. I couldn't really do much at the time. But it was all a secret when I came back from retirement to play against Man City in the FA Cup. And it was a good testament of character, because he stayed for another season, but you realised his best days were past him. But it was just the fact that he came back to help us when he needed to. He was a proper Man United servant, and he did so well, especially after having an eye injury in 2006, where he could have almost ended his career because one of his eyes was just ridiculously damaged. So it just goes to show that he's got a testament of character, just coming back from these injuries. And it was really nice to see him win the Champions League in 2008 after being suspended for the final in 99. But yeah, if you have any Paul Scholes memories, by all means, let us know.
His tackling ability.
His non-existent tackling ability.
His tackling was atrocious. Like, he'd pick up a yellow every other game. Like, his timing was crazy. Another memory, like that Villa Park one where he scored that volley. I remember that. He just flew in. How he was like our version of a Pirlo. He was very nonchalant. Like,
good way of describing him. Very nonchalant. He didn't care what was happening off the pitch. He just came on the pitch, did his job.
Yeah, he just goes about his business, and he's just controlling a whole game with 22 men on the pitch. Like nothing crazy. Like, it was just simple for him. Like, it was an art.
That's a really good way of putting it. Just, again, football was an art to many footballers like Zidane and Pirlo, Xavi, and Paul Scholes just made it look like an art form as well, where you could just ping a ball from one side of the pitch to the other and make sure he could
doesn't break a sweat. And you look at him, even when he was in his latter years as well, he wasn't running on the pitch like he apparently used to when he was a younger man. He could just read the game properly. He could learn how his teammates were playing, and he would know where Nani would be, or he'd know where Tevez would be, or this, that, and the other. And that's kind of one of, not a regret, but like, imagine like if we had signed Van Persie 2-3 years previously, and Scholes pinging it to Van Persie so many more times. That would have been fun to see. Would have been wicked, yeah.
And even for England as well, that's one of my it's not my regret to give, but it's a really bad moment to have like all of these young England players coming through, like a Raheem Sterling working with Paul Scholes, that would have been sick, or Wayne Rooney coming through like he did, playing more with Paul Scholes in England. And if we got that Lampard Scholes Gerrard combination,
that's what I was just gonna say. I would have loved to see him not retire so early, because he only retired at like 28, 29, didn't he?
Yeah, 28 in 2004.
So had he stayed when football was evolving a bit more, when people started having three in the middle, Scholes holding Gerrard, Lampard being box to box would have been brilliant. Like, Owen, Rooney, probably Owen was dying out, but Rooney as the focal 9. And at that time, we had like more wingers coming through. Like,
there's a young Aaron Lennon coming through. Beckham was on his way out as well.
Ashley Young.
Theo Walcott, can't forget him.
Walcott, yeah, exactly. Wright Phillips. So,
James Milner.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only shame that I can see from Paul Scholes' career, if he had stayed on a little bit longer for international duty.
Definitely. Let's try not to end it on such a glum thought. So I'm not sure what we can do. But yeah, I would say this is probably the end of our Ramadan series, unless there's one more that someone else wants to record. By all means, I've loved this series, talking to some of my old friends and family members about footballing heroes, and it was just really nice to have a conversation with you, Aminor, despite your football hero being like a swear word on our podcast. This technically doesn't count as a podcast, that's fine. Like a normal episode of our podcast. So yeah, it was really nice to just hear your thoughts on Steven Gerrard and kind of go back to our playground days of, oh, did you see that Gerrard goal? Did you see that Scholes goal? It was just like, yeah, I saw it, but it was against us, so I'm not gonna get happy about it. Especially that 4-1, and the way he made Anfield his domain as well. It was just really good to see, and he had that power in him. And what would you say? Do you reckon you'd have Steven Gerrard back as the replacement for Klopp as a manager?
Eventually. Not yet. I think he needs a little bit more experience. I don't want him to become like a Lampard.
He's done really well at Rangers, which is brilliant to see. And
he's more or less just secured.
It's secured them the league after 6-7 years of not winning the league in Scotland, and
with quite a lot of games in hand as well.
Definitely, it's made it a Farmers League basically, and even for Rangers at this time of speaking, they're still in the Europa League, and they've still got a really good But like, even watching them, Rangers are actually a fun team to watch in the
He
Europa
actually
League, so
plays very attractive football.
definitely does. And again, it's
Yeah.
the players buy into him, which is brilliant. And it's nice to see that you can actually go from going through your coaching badges properly and you can learn from it properly. And it's one of those things that if players don't rush into big roles or if they don't rush into manager roles straight away and you actually learn how to coach properly, Steven Gerrard's a prime example that it works. And Frank Lampard, he was never going to say no to the Chelsea role, but it's actually quite sad to see like our footballing heroes from our childhood. One's a pundit, one's a sacked manager, one's a successful manager at Rangers, and another one for Wayne Rooney is a manager at Derby County. So our time has flown by.
That just shows how we're getting older and older.
Definitely. Just don't look at our beards if you're watching this on YouTube. You can just hear from our voices. Just this. Then again, our listeners would never know what we were like as kids. So it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But nah, it's all well and good. But no, thank you very much for listening, everyone. I hope you all had a really good Ramadan, and I hope you liked our little Ramadan series. Amino, as always, thanks for the conversation.
Thanks for having me once again.
No worries, and we'll talk to you later. See you later.